Hello and welcome to another video from Sustenance and Covering, the only channel that you need to not only survive the current apocalypse, but actually enjoy it. I am Eusamoss. I've already done one of these interviews with Sustenance and Covering, and today's video is going to be done in response to questions someone's asked specifically about Easter, and we're hoping to cover things like the New Moon Festival, paganism, or the pagan aspects of it, and going into what actually happened during Jesus' crucifixion and trial and resurrection.
Yes.
Hello.
Well, I guess the first thing, I want to stick to the basics initially because Christianity is based on what? The Bible, right? So if we're going to talk about Easter, we need to talk about what the Bible says about Easter. And I guess most people know that we're not really commanded to celebrate Easter. And most people also recognize that Easter was kind of a hangover from paganism that just ended up in the celebration. But, I mean, the reality is that Christ's death and resurrection is a very important event in human history, but it doesn't say anywhere in the Bible to celebrate a holiday called Easter. But the Easter concept is in the Bible.
Okay, and what do you mean by that? The Easter concept?
Well, okay, that's like just talking about the Easter egg. In the very first books of the Bible, in Genesis, Eve is brought to Adam, and he says, well, this is at last bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. I shall call her woman, because out of man she came. And later it says that she was called Eve because she was to become the mother of all on the earth. Well, the reality is that's not actually accurate. She wasn't called woman because out of man she came. That's an English translation. What it says is she was called Aishish because out of Aish she came. So, and that word Aish means male tribal leader, and Aishish means female tribal leader, but it also means man and woman. Free man, free woman. When it says that she was called Eve, what it actually says in ancient Hebrew is she was called Hebe, because out of her all living men came. That word is egg.
Yeah.
So it's Aishish egg, and Aishish is Easter. So most people believe that the Bible was written in Hebrew and Greek. So the Old Testament was Hebrew. By the time Jesus came along, the Greek Empire, Roman Empire, was controlling that region of the earth. So everyone spoke Greek. But people that are in the know understand that there was also another language in there called Aramaic. But that isn't the end of it either, because these people were constantly coming into contact with others who spoke different languages, and so a lot of the words from those languages end up in the Bible, and they are not Hebrew or Greek or Aramaic. And it just as an example, and this is confusing for a lot of people, but people need to understand this concept. When we speak of Egypt, that's not what's recorded in the Bible. In the Bible, in the original language, Egypt is called Mitzrayim. Then later, when Jesus comes along, and it's Greek, it's not called Mitzrayim anymore, it's Agaptos. So, if we were to transliterate, then there would be some kind of word similar to Mitzrayim every time the Old Testament spoke of Egypt, and there would be a word somewhat similar to the word Agaptos, in the New Testament. So there would be confusion. As you're reading the Bible, you wouldn't see the consistency that region, we're talking about Egypt. So, Bible translators in their wisdom translate Mitzrayim as Egypt every time, and they translate Agaptos as Egypt every time. That way we understand that this nation, spoken of in the Old Testament, is the same nation spoken of in the New Testament. But they don't consistently do that. And so we've got other nations that are transliterated instead of translated. And one which is a big one is Canaan. Canaan and the Canaanites. Everybody knows that the Israelites were surrounded by the Canaanites, some possibly unimportant people that no longer exist. They never were a great nation or anything. But the reality is, Canaan is understood by everybody who's in the know, everybody who translates the Bible, that Canaan was Phoenicia. It was like one of the greatest world powers to ever exist. The Phoenician Empire is basically the foundation for all the world's navies today. All ocean commerce basically began with Phoenicia. And so that's confusing. We know what Egypt is, we should know what Phoenicia is, but when people are reading the Bible about Canaan, they don't get it. And another thing that's confusing about it is that a lot of the nations that are spoken of in the Bible were just parts of the Phoenician Empire. So when you talk about the Philistines, a lot of people think, well, the Philistines were another nation. Well, they really kind of weren't. They were still under the thumb of the Phoenician Empire. And and anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that if we don't translate a word the same way every time when we understand what it is, then people think we're talking about different entities, different people, different places. And so Eve, who is called Hebe and Aishish, gets lost. Gets lost in the translation, because later on, when we speak about the mother goddess, we're actually speaking about Eve, the mother goddess, the one who all the nations around there worshipped as the mother of all beings. And she's called later not Aishish, but Ashtoreth. When you get to the Greek portion of the Bible, it's Astarte. And outside of the Bible, every culture on the planet, and I'm talking about Chinese, South American, it doesn't matter. They all have that mother goddess entity, and it's always the same one. So Ishtar, Ashtoreth, Easter, Esther, all of those entities are the same person. Now, we understand it's paganism, and a lot of churches will admit, well, yeah, it's based on paganism, but those pagan holidays took place at the same time that Christ died, and so it's all right to incorporate a lot of those pagan traditions into celebration of Christ's resurrection. And really it isn't, but at the same time, those pagan entities are not, this is a concept that a lot of Christianity completely misses. They miss the point. Okay, we know that there's a false God and there's a true God. But that's really not a good way of presenting it, because there are no false gods. Every one of those gods was real. Now, to call them a false god or a true god is a little bit misleading. A better way to represent them as the rightful God, the Creator, our Father, and the wrongful gods. Those are some good points, man. I was waiting for you to jump in and ask me another question.
Well, you know what, Dan, because there was something you were saying earlier on about Phoenicia and the Phoenician Empire, and it's basically where you get the idea of navies from, and they sailed in the water. And I didn't want to say this at the time because this is related to a conversation that we had or another video that we've made that's actually going to go out after this one. But
I made that video, and then today was the day I was going to post it. And I just felt like, okay, the timing is right for the Easter video. I've been asked to talk about Easter. Well, it's pointless for me to go ahead and put them out in order and then put the Easter video out a week after Easter. So we're going to do things a little bit different.
Well, anyway, the point is we talk about the tribe of Dan in this other video, which you'll be seeing soon. And the tribe of Dan were said to have been unique amongst the 12 tribes because they had a seafaring... they're more like seafarers, or they had a relationship with the sea.
Yeah, and it's a lot of when we talk about all the different tribes of the nation of Israel, they all have their own little symbolisms, their own little unique personalities, and that was Dan's. But Dan also is the one that went outside of their territory.
Yeah,
and which is a big deal in the Bible because they were commanded not to do that.
Yeah. So that's why I was holding my tongue.
Yeah, okay. Well, we get back to this thing about Ashtoreth and the all the different incarnations of the mother goddess. And you can go back to that original story in Genesis And we get a little bit better idea of what was going on there by looking at other accounts in the Bible, because a lot of what happens in the Bible is reenactments or pre-enactments of historic events. So a very, very related story, which is played out over and over again, initially was played out by Abraham and Sarah. A lot of people understand Abraham and Sarah left their homeland to go into the promised land. They also understand that Sarah couldn't bear children initially, so she gave Hagar to Abraham as a slave girl. Well, this is also a little bit of a clunky translation that makes things seem different than what they actually are. This is a very major retelling of the story, because Abraham and Sarah were brother and sister. They were sent into the promised land to populate it. Now, why in the world would God choose a brother and sister to play this out? Well, because they represented another brother and sister, Adam and Eve. Yeah. In this story, Adam and Eve are told to obey natural law. That's all they're told. Eat food, drink water, get plenty of rest. Make sure nothing bad happens to the forest. Don't eat food that's not ready for you to eat or is not designed for you to eat. And that's not a covenant agreement. That is simply instinct. So it's not law like arbitrary man-made laws. It's a law, a natural law. So, don't jump off of a cliff. It doesn't enumerate every natural law given to Adam and Eve, but you just know that basic common sense rules built into humans would all fit into that category of natural law. But very early on, Eve is presented with an alternate offer. How in the world can you give somebody something better than natural law? But it was presented as better, because Satan approaches Eve and says, if you eat from these trees, you'll be like God. And God's higher up on the hierarchy. Do you want to just stay a mere human? If you eat this stuff that you're told not to eat, that you instinctively know not to eat, you'll learn something. You'll learn something that you wouldn't learn if you were to stick to natural law. And so she entered into this covenant agreement with Satan. Later on, it says that Satan returns with a whole bunch of his friends, fallen angels, and they enter into women and get them pregnant and produce hybrid offspring. Now, it's not specific that Eve was impregnated by Satan, but it does say that when they came, they took all who they wanted, which would probably be the majority, if not every single female that was on the earth at that time. We don't know exactly when this happened. But initially, they sealed the deal by eating a piece of fruit. So Eve ate this piece of fruit. She gave it to her husband. He ate this piece of fruit. Now they were all in this covenant agreement. But the agreement, the actual sealing of the deal, the consummation, was when those women became impregnated. That was the firm sealing of the deal that humanity would forever be in obedient to their new god, Satan.
Yeah.
In fact, that's what the whole Bible is about, is Jesus buying us back from Satan.
Yeah. Ransom.
So, that's right, it's a ransom. And people think, the churches teach that if you do bad things, you go to a bad place. If you do good things, you go to a good place. And the rules for what is good and what bad is basically arbitrary. It's just as arbitrary as eating that piece of fruit. It's a artificial law. It's not natural law. But the reality is that it says that Jesus paid the ransom for all mankind. And you think about it, every kidnapping that has ever taken place, when the ransom's paid, the people are repurchased. They aren't given a choice as to whether or not they're going to be being kidnapped is no more a personal choice than being freed from kidnapping. So it doesn't really matter. We're going to all be sitting around talking one day, and everybody's going to be there. It's not like Hitler's going to a bad place. But, of course, how that all works out later on, who knows, because there is a second death.
Yeah.
So those who are resurrected are not necessarily going to stay there forever. If they don't want to be there, God will give them a choice to opt out. Oh, but getting back to that, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
When the Israelites went into the Promised Land, they were given some very specific instructions. To anybody they came in contact could become an Israelite, but they had to be obedient to Israelite law. If they refused to be obedient to Israelite law, they had to get out. They couldn't stay in the Promised Land, and if they refused to leave, the Israelites were to kill them. And the very specific instructions were to tear down the Ashtoreths and the Baals. And so we have to understand that thing that they were told to get rid of is Easter. It's the same exact word. It's a different language. But when God specifically commanded them to take down the Ashtoreth images, or to kill the Ashtoreths, or kill the worshippers of Ashtoreth, what he's saying is, kill everyone who celebrates Easter. That's a pretty strong admonition for the Jewish people. But we're not under, Israeli law now, or Jewish law, the law of Moses.
So we're just clarifying that you're not telling people to go out and kill people who buy chocolate eggs and things like that.
No. Yeah, the Easter egg is...
We wouldn't advocate that.
Yeah, no. In fact, there's a lot of sins that are worse than that.
Yeah.
And it's not our business. Like I say, Jesus repurchased us. So, human beings, look, I drove my car yesterday. I don't think that pleased God.
No.
That breaks natural law. I'm not going to look down on somebody because they celebrate a holiday or whatever. That's what most of the trouble in this world is people on the other side of an artificial border have a different God. So, the nation I live in will send people with weapons to go kill all of those people, and vice versa.
Yeah.
It's not to someone who really is a servant of the true God. We understand it's God's right to allow people to do what they want.
Yeah.
We can't go back in there and say, well, maybe God's okay with this, but I'm not.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it says right there in the Bible, vengeance is mine.
Yeah, that's right. I did a video a while back called "We Can Fix This," and it was about all the different religions on the world and how they're gonna create paradise. And I participate in that. When people talk about my trees, and I guess if someone's just stumbled on this video, I do a lot of videos about the forest. I'm restoring my forest. That's just my hobby. That's not a command from God. According to natural law, humans are supposed to take care of the forest, but the forest is gone. What I'm doing out here is not that command to make sure nothing bad happens to the forest. Bad things have happened to my forest, so we're past that.
The horse is bolted.
Yeah, but it's not like I'm thinking that I'm going to fix the world by planting more trees. I just want to plant more trees.
It's the healthy thing to do.
Yeah, it's just like a guy that wants to watch a sporting event. That's his thing. My thing is trees.
Well, you mentioned in earlier, we were talking, so we've talked about Ashtoreth. We've talked about the festival and, the command that was given to ancient Israel, or the observant of ancient Israeli law, or the law of Moses. And there's talk in the Old Testament of the New Moon Festival, and we've already mentioned the name Hueva. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? That's actually, I think in Spanish it's huevos.
Yeah.
And, every language is related. If we go back in history far enough, we get to Babylon, everybody spoke the same language. And you can imagine that if languages evolved back then the way they evolved now, that everybody would have been a little bit closer in their communications. And that's bore out in the concordance. If you go to the Strong's Online Concordance, a lot of times when you're looking at these words, you'll recognize them as related to other words, especially if you're familiar with other languages. And they'll even say in there, next to the word, no matter what it is, Arabic origin or Greek origin. So we're all related. And so that, heve and huevos, same thing.
Yeah.
Egg.
But I'm also thinking of how that ties in with the moon.
Yeah, and the moon, okay, if we go back far enough, we'll see that all of the mother goddesses throughout history and all of the Baals throughout history share similar characteristics. And in most cultures, the Baals are always represented by the sun, and the Ashtoreths are represented by the moon. In fact, if we go to ancient Egypt, Osiris is the sun god, and Isis, which is Aishish in Hebrew, is the moon goddess. And so every culture has this.
Diana in the Roman is the moon goddess as well.
Yes, and she's mentioned in the Bible.
Yeah.
By that name. So it's, once again, it's every culture has a little bit different name, but it's the same god, same goddess. Yeah. Baal, who is Osiris in the Egyptian culture, Osiris means bearer of the eye of enlightenment. Later, when God is talking directly to Satan, he calls him Lucifer. He said, "Oh, you Lucifer, how far you have fallen. You once walked upon the glowing stones." Well, that Lucifer means bearer of light. It's the same exact individual. And we know that because Baal is married to Ashtoreth, and Ashtoreth is Aishish, which is Isis. It's the same god, same goddess. Now, what's interesting about the word Baal is it's spoken of in plurals, and Ashtoreth is spoken of in plurals. In other words, it would say, go out and kill all of the Baals, all of the Ashtoreths, as if they're separate individuals. But really, any of the demons who came to earth and impregnated women would qualify as Baals. Baal simply means the god, and the inference is that it's the god by two-way mutual agreement or covenant. The covenant God. Now this is one of the ways that the Bible confuses us is when it's talking about one of these unrighteous or wrongful gods, it will use the term Baal. But when the word Baal is used to describe Yahweh, the rightful God, we call it husband. We completely take that out. It says, there will come a day when you will not call me my husband, but you will call me Ishi. Well, that scripture, what it's saying is, there will come a day when you will no longer refer to me as a God by contract. Because by the time the Israelites came along, the Jews, they entered into a contract with God. So they were doing the same things as the religions were doing who worshiped the other Baals.
Yeah.
Which meant that now God, the Creator, is their Baal. Baali, my Baal, my God by contract. And so when he said there will come a day when you will no longer worship me as my God by contract, but you will worship me as Ishi, what it's saying is, male tribal leader, you'll one day accept me as your tribal leader, as a higher up on your hierarchy. All the hierarchies we have now are artificial. No human being was meant to dictate to other human beings how to live. But God is. God instills natural law into man. The false gods always instill some kind of artificial, arbitrary system of rules.
Yeah. So when we talk about, when you use the term there, dictating, and when we think about dictatorships in human terms, we are thinking about things like contracts, religion, observance of rituals, so on and so forth. But the natural law is not a paper law, it's not a stone law, it is simply something which is inside of us already, and it tends towards looking after each other, looking after the planet, looking after the forest, looking after the animals, and observing our place in the scheme of things under God, or the true God, or the rightful God.
Yeah, I've always looked at people who worship the hierarchy, and I've thought, there's something wrong here. Why would they do that? I mean, even when I was in the military, I could not see an admiral or a general as higher up than me. I recognized it was artificial. If this guy told me to shine my shoes, it's not like I would tell him no. But at the same time, I recognized that his authority over me was by contract, and that one day that contract would run up. And after that, he's just another guy. So, but other people, even after they leave the military and the contract's over, they'll speak of high-ranking militarists as somehow above them. If you really stick to the letter of the law, once you become a civilian, you outrank generals. You know, so it's an artificial concept that I never could understand. Other people somehow instinctively recognize it, and I think it's just a perversion of our natural inbuilt instincts. We know that God is above us, and we know that on this hierarchy that fish are below us.
Yeah.
But somehow we're able to make the jump as humans, humanity, to suddenly recognize a hierarchy that's has
Unnatural?
no, yeah, unnatural, very bad.
So anyway, the video is about Easter. So
So here we go. If you said earlier we were going to talk about the new moons. Okay, there are actually two words in the Bible that are translated as new moon, and I'm talking about back in the Hebrew Scriptures. And I've listened to other religions explain why these two different words are translated as new moon, and their whole thing is that one is like a religious recognition of the new moon, but it's not that. It's that we had a new moon, which was actually an eclipse, which took place once a year. Lunar eclipse, new moon. So different. Then it says, God is changing times and seasons. And it said, many of the prophets said that God is changing times and seasons. And from then on, we no longer have that word for new moon. We have a different word as new moon. And once again, confusion, because both are translated as new moon. But after God changed times and seasons, which is also a mistranslation, God changed months and years. And so that has a completely different meaning than God changing times and seasons, because a lot of people think, oh, well, now we have new holidays. Different holidays now than we had before. That's not what it's about. It's about actually changing the way that the earth and the sun and the moon function. And so you don't have a new moon once a year. You have a new moon, which is part of the newly created lunar cycle based on the fact that the earth and the moon and the sun are out of conjunction. When we have a lunar eclipse, that is called conjunction because two or more celestial objects do the same thing at the same time. In the ancient past, when we had a 360-day year with 12 equal 30-day months, what that meant is that the orbit of the moon and the orbit of the earth were always, can't think of the term that NASA uses, but it was such that as the earth was going around the sun, the angle of the earth was constantly changing, and when the equator fell directly beneath the sun, it would cause an eclipse on the moon, because the moon always circles the equator. So until the equator is in alignment with the sun, you don't have that. But they would have a lunar eclipse once a year. Solar cycles that we have now, lunar cycles, are not based on that, because the moon is actually circling the earth at a different speed that sets it outside of conjunction. So when there were conjunctions in the ancient past, and there were a lot of them, it wasn't just the sun and the earth and the moon, most cultures recorded that there were actually conjunctions between the earth and other planets and the sun. That word conjunction means anytime two celestial objects come into doing the same thing, but it is also the word that's used in English for sexual intercourse. Conjunction. So, yeah, so the whole thing is that when this
marriage as well, right?
What's that now?
Marriage.
Yeah.
Like a marriage.
Right.
Okay.
So what happened in the ancient world is on the days when the sun and the moon and the earth would come into conjunction, all of humanity, all around the world, celebrated the impregnation of the women who were impregnated by those wicked angels to give birth to hybrid offspring. That's what Easter is. Easter is a celebration of the creation of the Nephilim. Nowadays, when we have Easter, or Passover, or the memorial of the Lord's death, which is celebrated by some religions, every religion has a different date. Now, if we celebrate a holiday like George Washington's birthday or Post Office Day or whatever, it's always going to fall on a calendar date, you know, March the 15th or something. But with Easter, that's not the case. And every culture has a different day for celebrating, and that's because they always try to match up the equinox and a particular day, most cases Sunday, and a false conjunction of the earth and the sun and the moon. So they'll try to time it to when there's going to be a new moon according to our lunar cycles, when it's going to be Sunday, and when it's close to an equinox. And so everybody celebrates on a different day.
Yeah, I mean, well, over here, I'm in England, and this morning, yesterday was the beginning of British summertime, which means the clocks go forward, so it's darker an hour in the morning and it's lighter an hour in the evening. The clocks changed at midnight today.
Yeah, and the equinox, but getting back to what that means is when the Earth is tilted like this. Say you're on the northern hemisphere, you're going to be really cold. That's your winter, and that takes place around the first day of the first month, you know, according to our calendar. But our calendar doesn't match the Hebrew calendar. In the ancient past, when the Israelites came out of Egypt and went into the Promised Land, the first thing God did was He gave them the Ten Commandments, which was natural law. And in there it says, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." Well, that commandment in English sounds like "Thou shalt not have sex without a license," or "Thou shalt not have sex with somebody else's licensed sex partner." But what it is "Thou shalt not engage in unlawful sexuality," which at that time the only law they had about sexuality was don't have sex with demons. You know, when the angels came and had sex, that broke God's natural laws. That's interspecies. It's not supposed to happen. So they were given that law, natural law. Don't kill, don't steal, love God, love your neighbor. But when Moses came down with the Ten Commandments, they were already breaking all those laws.
Yeah.
So Moses threw down those tablets and broke them, at which point he had to go back up and get them over again.
Yeah.
But when he came back, he didn't just bring back the Ten Commandments. The second time around, he came back with, I think, 700 other laws or somewhere around there. And it was those regular laws. Don't eat bacon, don't put too many tassels on your clothes. Things that are just basically similar to the nations that surrounded Israel. It was religious law. One of those laws was to celebrate the Feast of Trumpets. The Feast of Trumpets was that conjugation that all of the other nations celebrated, but just in acknowledgement of God. See, everybody around them, when they had that Feast of Trumpets, which according to the Hebrew calendar was the first day of the 7th month, they would have a lunar eclipse. And all they did was they blew a trumpet and they celebrated, while all the nations around them worshiped Ashtoreth. That was her day. But later, God went back after the people in the Promised Land failed to keep the law that they promised to keep. You know, first they promised to keep natural law; they didn't do that. So then He brought them religious law, because they said, "Well, we'll follow a religious law." Well, they didn't do that, and so when it was all said and done, and He sent the prophets to destroy the Jewish religion forever, and to destroy all other religions, because that's when He changed times and seasons. So now not only could the Jews not celebrate the Feast of Trumpets, but the surrounding nations couldn't celebrate the Feast of Ashtoreth, because there was no longer that conjunction. Well, they went ahead and did it anyway. They said, well, that's how we get the timing of Easter now. It's like you don't have this celebration every 360 days, you just have it whenever everything is as close to being the way they want it as possible. But God, after He told them He was changing times and seasons, and He was doing away with the Jewish religion forever, and the covenant was broken. Remember, a covenant is a two-way agreement. It can be broken by either part. If you and I make an agreement, and you're going to come over here and cut my grass, and I'm going to give you $20, if you come cut my grass and I don't give you $20, and obviously the agreement's broken, you're not going to come back next week and cut my grass.
Yep.
And so that's the way the covenant between man and Satan worked, and it's the way that the covenant between man and God worked. You know, Satan promised that we would have knowledge like God. Well, that didn't happen. He broke the covenant.
Yeah.
So we're no longer bound to him, other than the fact that he still rules the earth until Jesus comes and gets rid of him.
Yeah. So we were also told you shall not surely die.
Yeah, there you go. And that was a really big one.
Yeah, it's a whopper.
Yeah, and in fact, we know that. See, the entire religion of Satan, as it existed before the flood, was actually a credible religion up until the day that Eve died. Probably when the first person died, it was a big deal. But Satan could say, well, you know, it's a religion, so it's based on punishment and reward. Like, well, yeah, well, sure, Enoch died, but you know, he was bad. He didn't go to work on time, or he didn't keep his hair cut, whatever their thing was.
Paid taxes.
Yeah, right. But here we had the mother goddess Eve herself die. Now, how do you explain that? You know, it's not like people didn't know who she was or didn't recognize that she wasn't there anymore, because she was the mother of everybody. So when Eve died, you know, there's no telling how many generations of people had come and gone, because she lived for, who knows? Adam lived close to 1,000 years. At least over 900. So when Eve died, it's like, it wasn't like the earth was filled with strangers. They're like, great, 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 great grandma died. They knew. They knew at that point that Satan's religion didn't work.
Yeah.
Hebe.
Mm-hmm.
Aishish.
Ishtar.
Ashtoreth. Astarte. Esther. Easter. Diana. She was gone.
Yeah.
And in fact, prior to the flood, all images well, I don't even know that there are any images of her prior to the flood, but in Egypt, the images of Osiris and Horus, Eve or Isis, always kind of just looks like a woman.
Yeah. She's wearing elaborate headgear, but that's it.
But after that, she's always pictured with wings.
Yes.
And so it's like, okay, how do you explain the death of Eve? So the lie has to go on. That's what happens with all of us. When we lie, we have to eventually come up with other lies to cover that lie. So it's like, well, Grandma went to heaven, so we're going to put wings on her so everybody knows that Grandma's in heaven.
Yeah. I mean, how much more of this do you want to cover before we talk about what Easter is said to be today? Like
Let's do that now.
Yeah, I mean, what's the real story of this ritual observance that the world's going through round about now?
Yeah, everybody that celebrates Easter is celebrating the resurrection of Jesus. One of the most incredible events in human history. You know, it takes place at the same time, and there's a reason for that. I mean, that was Satan's special festival. If he's going to murder God's son, then certainly he would want to do it on his day. And so it's not a big leap for people to incorporate those rituals with a way of celebrating Christ's resurrection. You know, it's not wickedness. It's not wickedness to want to remember the greatest thing that's ever happened in human history. It's just coincidence. No one here today who celebrates Easter was there when it was a celebration to the Mother Goddess.
Yeah. Well, we still have that though. It's like chocolate eggs, rabbits. You face all that stuff back, and it's.
Yeah, well, here's the thing too. I said that there is no such thing as a false God and a true God. There's only the correct God and the incorrect gods. Mm-hmm. And we're told it's almost like it's a fiction. Not, most Christians recognize God is God, Jesus is God's son. But when we start talking about Ashtoreth and Baal, it's like talking about unicorns and flying fish. It makes people think that this is, all of that's a fantasy.
Yeah.
We call them false gods because they really never existed. Well, that's not true. They did exist, and and the fact that cultures around the earth recognize that they existed, even though these cultures supposedly had no contact with each other back then.
And that's been something that's come out a few times that we've spoken in videos, is that the Bible is about real things. It's about real things that actually happened. So when it talks about false gods or goddesses and the Ashtoreths and the Baals and so on, it's talking about these things are actually happening in the nations. They're not talking about made-up gods or anything like that. They're talking about, you know, when it says Satan's the lord of this world, it means it. It's literally.
Yeah, because I mean, religion is religion, but and it never once did God voluntarily give man a religion. He basically gave in to their desires. You know, just like when Israel went into the Promised Land, you know, they're like, "Your king is God." You know, how would anybody reject that? You know, look at those guys. They got presidents, emperors. I got God, but they're like, "Hey, you know what? We kind of like that concept. We want a president." And so they chose it, and God told them, said, "Hey, you know what? They haven't rejected you." He told Samuel. Samuel said, "Please don't let them do this." He said, "No, don't worry about it. They haven't rejected you. They've rejected me." And it's the same thing with religion. When Moses gave man religion, you know they had to break his heart. But he understood. They haven't rejected me, they've rejected God. Yeah. And God's okay with it. So we're going to go through, we're going to do this. Because as long as God has given us free will to test the waters, and you know, that's what humans are. We have to learn by our own mistakes. You know, you see a family where the dad does this dumb thing, then you go on down the road and the kid does the same thing, and the grandkid does it. And they had the parents and the grandparents to tell them not to do that. But it's a good thing, because when this is all over with, none of us are going to return to that. You know, you wake up in a forest surrounded by people that love you and free food. You know, you're not, even if you're the Pope, you're not going to say, "Well, I really like the costumes I had before. I want to go back to religion." And the scripture that ties all that up is where it says, "This is the religion, the only religion that God accepts, to take care of orphans and widows in their tribulation, and to be no part of civilization."
Yeah.
Of course, I think the Bible's translated as "no part of the world," and somehow the concept of sex, drugs, and rock and roll gets in there. But what it's really saying is, you know, don't put any hopes in your social order. You know, when your life gets bad, don't go to a judge and try to get him to fix it for you. You know, don't depend on systems that have been put in place by the empire. Just know that no matter how bad it gets, if you get sick, if you get poor, if you get homeless, if your family abandons you, God's the only one that can fix that. And He will.
Yeah. That's the promise throughout the Bible.
Yeah, from the very beginning. It's like, you know, Eve eats from the fruit. God takes each and every person that was around at that time, Satan, Adam, and Eve, and says, "Okay, I'm going to put enmity between you and the woman, between her seed and your seed. He will bruise you in the head, you will bruise him in the heel." So that whole prophecy, even though it seems coded, is a promise that as this all plays out, everything's going to work out in the end.
Yeah. Well, like I like that, and I don't know. Like, is there anything else that you think needs to be said?
You know what? After this is all put together and edited and posted on YouTube, I'm sure I'll come up with something. But there's always another day.
Yeah. Well, just to say, last night I sent some ideas over to you, and we've actually covered some of that in this. But maybe, I mean, this is specifically about Easter. This video is specifically about Easter. But in this video, we've talked about Eve, Adam, Osiris, the new moons, the changing of the seasons, and there are some elements of that I think we could really talk about, but that would create another video in and of itself, and it wouldn't specifically be about Easter.
Yeah, I really hope that anybody that stumbles upon this will watch the whole thing.
And the other thing, you have a couple of other videos that deal with this, with Easter egg hunt on the Sustenance and Covering channel, and is it 3 women? 3 women.
Yeah, and I actually, as we said, this is a request, a video about Easter. And I said, well, I've already done that. And he went and watched it, and he said, I've already seen this, but I want something to post on my Facebook page. And those videos seem to be, you have to have a lot of background information. I'm hoping that everything I talked about today is basic enough that a person who's familiar with religion, familiar with the Bible, will see, what I'm proposing here.
Yeah.
And understand that, yeah, that makes sense. But I'll say this: if you don't watch the whole video, say you just watch the introduction and you skip ahead a little bit and you skip a little ahead, you're going to probably not get anything out of this. All of this ties in. I mean, it's not. I'm not making this up. Everything that is recorded in the Bible is about this struggle. And I say this all the time, it's a struggle between God and Satan, between God's kingdom and Satan's empire. It's about the war between civilization and creation. It's the war between the bad angels and the good angels. And
shepherds and builders.
Yeah, the war between the shepherds and the builders. The people that take care of living. The word shepherd in the Bible means people who wander the earth caring for living things. And all of God's friends in the earliest days were shepherds. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, David, and all of God's enemies were builders. Cain.
First one.
Yeah, Lucifer.
Nimrod.
Yeah, there you go. So, and that's an important thing. If you just carry that away with you and you read the Bible, you'll see it.
Yeah. I think one of the criticisms we could get, it's something that I read recently, and it wasn't about you, but it was about a book that I read, and they said that the author just presumes a familiarity with the things that he's writing about. So sometimes it seems obvious that you can get from A to B. Sometimes it isn't so obvious. So I don't know. The whole point of this is to try and be as clear as possible, right?
Yeah. I mean, we could, and I guess we do the same thing. But the rulers of the religions have some favorite scriptures. In general, this is the way. The only really way that you can tell of what we as humans think is a bad religion from a good religion is a bad religion will have 6 scriptures that they base their whole faith on, and a good religion will have 100 scriptures that they base their faith on. But the Bible actually has like 30-something thousand scriptures. So that if you're going to have a really good religion, it has to be based on a whole 30,000. You can't just pick and choose because, there are people that are very, very religious that all they know is ye must be born again, or a couple of verses like that.
Yeah. Let's not talk about hell either. We've done that, haven't we?
Yeah, I always get in trouble with that. It's like I'll say one thing about hell, and then half the comments are about what I said about hell and not about the video. So
I think I understand why, though. I think if someone's entertaining the notion that there's a possibility that place is real, and they don't want to go there, and they're going to make it their job to stop other people from going there by warning that there's this place called hell. But
and look, there is absolutely. Obviously, as human beings, we should be motivated to do the basic things that the Bible asks us to do. Every decision, I try to make every decision based on that. I don't believe in religious dietary laws, but I try to eat healthy. I don't believe in clothing laws, but when I go to shop, I always make a point of putting clothing on. So but at the same time, I don't have $5,000 worth of suits. And I don't have a dietitian over here cooking for me. So but I make those decisions based on what do I think is the right way to do things. But I don't do it because I'm scared that if I make the wrong decision, God's going to torture me.
In hell.
Right.
Forever. In front of an audience.
But there is going to be a punishment. Maybe it's a good thing that people are scared of hell. Because I certainly don't want to go into the resurrection knowing that I abused my neighbors or
Yeah.
that I abused the earth or that at least knowing that I tried. Because it said there is going to be everlasting shame.
Yeah. Well, in the other video that's going to go up soon, we did talk about Gehenna, uh, specifically about Gehenna, and not just identifying that. I guess for people like you and I right now, well, in the nations that we live in, um, top of the heap, isn't it? We don't deal with the reality that the majority of the earth lives with. So
Oh yeah, I'm not. Hey, I saw a video by some comedian, and he was talking about all the bad things that go on at the top of the heap. You know, inside of the empire, at the core of this empire. And when he got done, his conclusion was, "Well, look, if I had to do it all over again, I would still want to do it here." You know, and
yeah,
I,
yeah,
you know, it's like, you know, I've lived the life of a white man. And that's
yeah,
one I'm going to choose next time too, because I don't want to get beat up and
yeah,
put in prison and shot. And
yeah. And just by sheer dint of the fact that we live in these nations, which are top of the heap, there's things we're going to do indirectly, even indirectly. We are hurting our neighbours, and our neighbours are it's the rest of humanity. We're all neighbours. We're all brothers and sisters.
yeah, well, example I give sometime, and my brother lives like 100 miles from me. If I put a box of shoes in the mail and send it to him, it costs $10. But I can go down to a store and purchase a pair of shoes for $10. When you're purchasing a pair of shoes, not shoes that are being sent 100 miles to my brother, but a pair of shoes that was shipped 3,000 miles. You got to know that in 3,000 miles in that direction, there's a guy with no shoes working in a shoe factory. Because they're not paying him good money to make free shoes.
There's a happy Easter message for the planet.
Yeah. And I got like 12 pairs of shoes.
Mm.
But, you know, most of my shoes do have holes in them, and I purchased them used, and you know, it's not like I'm fully vested in civilization's economic system.
But here we are. We're both on our computers having this discussion.
Yeah, there you go.
These computers were built by slaves.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about that. So.
Yeah, with the factory where they build these. It's in a city where by law building codes do not allow putting bars on the windows. But so many employees were committing suicide by jumping out of the window that they had to put safety nets around the building.
Yeah.
How miserable do you have to be to take your own life? And if you got a really good job at a computer factory, especially so. But those people, basically, they have no place to live. They don't have any material possessions. They know that at the end of the day, they're going to get just enough food to live. And that's basically it. They may not get food. They may get a coin with enough value to get them food. But that's not slavery because they're being paid.
Yeah, sure.
We're getting way off of Easter. I think it's time to wrap it up, Eusamoss.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's that. There's another one in the can coming up as well. Someone asked about the two brothers, and we did a video about that as well, which will be going up sometime soon.
Yeah, I'm working on a few things. A lot of the stuff I do is not like this. It's things about planting and harvesting and, you know, things I'm doing out in the forest. But I've been getting rained on like every other day. Which means we got a day of rain, then we got a day when there's this much water on the ground, so I'm having a little trouble putting that video together.
Well, something to look forward to. All right, should we wrap it up?
Take us out.
If you don't want to survive,
Don't listen to us.
thank you.
Woo! All right, let me turn off the thing. I'm gonna go right now.